We'll go ahead and jump right in. This is Lindsay Kiesler, President and CEO of your chamber. I want to thank you for taking your time out this morning to take part in part 2 of our COVID-19 in Your Business webinar series. I want to thank the co-host today for this whole webinar series. It's Catawba County Public Health, Catawba County Emergency Services, Catawba County EDC, and the Small Business Technology and Development Center. If you didn't get a chance to join us live yet for yesterday's part 1, we did record it, and it is live on our central resource page for everything COVID-19 in your business, which is located on the chamber's on our website. So if you go to www.catawbachamber.org, the top of the screen, you're going to see a big red box that says COVID-19 Business Resource Guide. If you click that, right towards the top of the feed actually will be the recording of our part 1 of this webinar series. So thank you for joining today. I also want to thank our speakers that are with us that you'll hear from. Mark Knuckles, he's the founder and president of Mark Knuckles and Associates. We have Ron Elmore, who's the regional director of the Small Business Technology and Development Center. And with us as well, if you have any public health questions, Dory Maltba, who's a charge health nurse at Catawba County Public Health, is also here that can be a part of our Q&A session at the end. I want to give you a couple housekeeping reminders, and it sounds like everyone has done this already, but just in case, just make sure that your phone or your computer is on mute so that we can't hear you and it won't be a disruption to the session. And chat box. So use that chat box for your questions. We're not going to have audio capability on the Q&A, but we will take Q&A via your chat box. So you see, enter your message just throughout the presentation. If something comes up around one of these presentations, just throw your question there, and we'll get to those at the end of each of our sessions. Nathan Hurett with the Catawba County EDC, he is going to be facilitating Q&A with our presenters. And then just a reminder, just as we did yesterday, this is being recorded, and we will publish this webinar in full length on that resource page, and we'll also be sharing it on social media. But we will take it down once the information expires or changes to ensure that you have the most relevant information. Again, I want to thank you. I want to also remind you that your partners are in it with you. So if you have questions that are unanswered, use this as an opportunity to ask them. If you need personal assistance on anything when it comes to navigating this unprecedented time, please call on your chamber or your EDC or any other local government or economic development partners. We're here for you. So I just want to make sure that I stress that. Can't stress that enough. So moving right along, moving into our first speaker is Mark Knuckles. Mark Knuckles, as I mentioned, is the founder and president of Mark Knuckles and Associates, Inc. He's a human resource management consultant with more than 35 years of experience with wage and hour and discrimination laws. He is a former U.S. Department of Labor investigator who investigated all types of employers. His firm provides specialized training and consulting to cities, counties, state agencies, for-profit and not-for-profit employers in 34 states. He's conducted hundreds of compliance reviews for employers dealing with Fair Labor Standards Act, Civil Rights Act, discrimination laws, Family and Medical Leave Act, Americans with Disabilities Act, and other employment laws and regulations. He and his firm regularly assist employers undergoing U.S. DOL wage, hour, and EEOC agency investigations. They assist clients' legal counsel with as disclosed and non-disclosed FLSA experts with litigation and non-litigation matters. He testified for more than 12 hours in a recent FLSA Section 14C wage review hearing where the U.S. Department of Labor administrative law judge recognized him as a commensurate wage expert. Since 1991, he has published the Knuckles Report, a monthly newsletter on workplace compliance issues and human resource management best practices. His firm is an approved HR training provider by the Human Resource Certification Institute, HRCI, and the Society for Human Resource Management, SHRM, the world's largest association of HR professionals. He's earned the Senior Professional in Human Resource designation by HRCI and the Senior Certified Professional SCP from SHRM. He's a native of Atlanta, Georgia. He's also a veteran where he flew combat helicopters in Vietnam, earning 27 Air Medals and the Bronze Star Medal. He and his wife, Joy, reside in Hartwell, Georgia. So please, I will now turn it over to Mark Knuckles.
Thank you, Lindsay, and good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? I can't hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. All right. Good. Let me just say a few things here before we get started, and you can click on to the next slide there, Nathan. As Lindsay said, this is what we're experiencing is unprecedented in human history, and we just got to all be prepared for not having answers to all our questions, to the changes that are going to occur, not just daily, but by the hour. So it's even the writers of the law that was recently passed and signed by President Trump, they don't know all the answers to some of these. I'm going to cover the major points with you. So we've got to be flexible, and we just got to stay informed as best we can, answer questions where we can. But sometimes we're just going to have to say, I don't know, and we're just going to have to say sometimes we got to wait and see, because even our leaders don't know. And with most of these things, as we move forward with something that we've never experienced before. And taking that into context is the fact that our workforces and the people that we work with, they're a second family to all of us. And so that poses some issues and some dynamics and even some conflicts with some of the laws as we move forward here, and as people experience and contract this virus and become ill. So Nathan, let's move to the next one. And as we get started, I'm going to try to cover the major points here with the FLSA, the FMLA, the ADA, and how that impacts what's happening now. Also, I'm going to jump into this new law that's been passed and how it's going to impact us. When we get into the ADA, I'm going to talk about some things about what we can ask and what we cannot ask and what we can do. So, but starting out now, what does currently apply and how do the laws apply to us right now? Dealing with the FLSA and also with the North Carolina Wage Hour Act, which are basically the same. They follow each other. What is an employer required to pay? And the employer, of course, is not required to pay an hourly non-exempt worker for time that they're out. If they're not at work, there's no pay required there. However, employers should be aware of their policies, should check their policies, and make sure that they stay in compliance with their own policies. So that's an easy one for hourly non-exempt workers. It gets a little more complicated with salaried exempt workers and how the law restricts salary reductions. Now, with private employers, the salary must be paid basically for the entire week if any work is performed. Now, the regulation does allow some deductions, but it does not for private employers. It does not allow an employer to pay a portion of the salary in a week of a furlough with a salaried exempt worker. So a salaried exempt worker can take leave. They can, with the leave plan that the employer has, and that's not considered a deduction in the salary. But an employer cannot lay off a worker or close a plant under the a private employer cannot close the plant or close the office. Let's say they close the office 3 days out of the week. They could not pay 3/5 of the salary. The full salary has to be paid to a salaried exempt worker in such case there. Now, if a salaried exempt worker has run out of leave, let's say they've run out of their sick leave, their earned sick leave, the employer can dock the salary on a whole day increment, but not by the hour for the absences that may occur that week. So we need to be employers need to be real careful here with salaried exempt workers. Now I'm talking primarily the private employers there. Now, government agency employers are under a different rule. So there's a special rule called public policy accountability, and they are allowed to dock or reduce a salary by a salaried exempt employee that's not able to work the entire week and does not have enough leave to cover that week. So if that event occurs and there's insufficient leave to cover the absence, a public agency employer can reduce the salary under that special rule of public accountability by the hour. So I don't want to get too far into the details on that and get everyone confused, because we don't know how often that will occur, particularly with public agency employers. And then we can take questions at the end with regard to that. So to sum that up there, with hourly non-exempt workers, they do not have to be paid when they are not at work. Salaried exempt workers generally must get their salary and or be able to take leave for their absence, to cover their absence. Now on that slide there are some links for some additional information there that I found. And if you don't, if all you really need is that primary link there, like dol.gov, eeoc.gov, hasha.gov, and you go to those primary landing pages, there are links now at the top of the landing pages for these additional helps during the COVID-19 and the pandemic that we're going through. Nathan, you can click us on forward here. All right. Now, we got to remember our basic requirements here. And of course, we're sending people home. We got now what we call teleworkers or telecommuters. We got to maintain time records, just like we did when they were working in our offices and our plants. Those the law does not require a start and a stop time. That's a lot of people believe it does. It doesn't. It only requires the total hours worked each day and the total hours worked each week. Now, for those working at home, having a start and stop time, some employers consider that a good thing to do because of the typical distractions that a person working at home encounters. They may be caring for somebody at home, they may be caring for their children, and they may be distracted and at work and then off work, and so the employer may want them to log in and out of a computer program when they start and stop work, but the law itself only requires the total hours worked each day and the total hours worked each week. Now, one thing that can happen here that's different with a teleworker, if a teleworker has to transport materials or items to and from the office or the plant from their home, that could make that travel time to and from home hours of work, whereas otherwise it would be normally considered commuting time and not hours of work. So employers that are sending workers home need to be conscious of that and make a determination whether there's any significant travel there transporting materials. Maybe they don't have to transport anything, of course, but if they are having to transport things to and from home, that could make that commuting time hours worked under the FLSA. Something else it's popping up here now is with the extra expenses that a person that's sent home to be a teleworker may incur, which would be considered business expenses. There could be additional bandwidth or higher speed for internet service. Of course, if the employee already has internet service and that's for their personal use, the employer would not be required to reimburse them for that. But the cost of additional speed, these things would be considered a business expense. Now, how does that impact the law? Well, it only impacts the employee if it would reduce their pay below the minimum wage. So in North Carolina, our minimum wage is the same as the federal, $7.25 an hour. So a business expense would only become unlawful if it reduced the employee's hourly rate that week below the minimum wage. Now, salaried workers, again, it changes there. The salary has no relation to the minimum wage because the salaried exempt worker is exempt from the minimum wage in that sense. The salary becomes the minimum wage, if you would like to think of it like that. A business expense cannot reduce their salary, cannot be the result of reducing their salary. So we want to be aware of any extra expenses that telework may impose upon an employee. Now, with family medical leave, we still have the traditional family leave that we have, and that covers all employers with 50 or more employees are subject to that law. An eligible employee is one that has worked 12 months and then has for the employer and has also worked 1,250 hours in the last 12 months. Absence due to the virus would be considered could be considered a leave eligible for FMLA. Again, remember that it's 3 or more days of incapacity. Incapacity is not just a day of work that's absence. It's also an off day where they may be incapacitated. For example, if someone got up on Sunday morning, had a fever, stayed in bed all day, that's a day of incapacity, and that would count toward the three days that would trigger the FMLA. Remember also that the Department of Labor has made it clear that FMLA is not an option of the employee or the employer. If the absence meets the criteria, one of the qualifying criteria for FMLA, it must be recorded as FMLA, and the FMLA rights and protections have to be given the employee with that event. So time records should reflect the FMLA, the absence, of course, the leave, what it was used for, and the FMLA has the job and insurance protection for the employer provided insurance. Nathan, you can go to the next one. Now, let's talk about the new FMLA that was passed night before last or signed into law early yesterday morning, I believe it was. This has got a temporary provision which is being referred to as the eFMLA, the emergency FMLA. This is triggered by declared national, state, or local public health emergency, and it expires December 31st of this year. Now, covered employers have been expanded to include private and public employers as defined by the FLSA, and most of the definitions here from about employer and employee all flow out of the Fair Labor Standards Act and the Family Medical Leave Act. However, this version, the eFMLA, covers employers with less than 50 employees. So virtually all employers in America are covered except for those with 500 or more employees. This is an upside down exemption. Usually exemptions exempt small employers. In this case here, this law exempts large employers. And this was quite a discussion in Congress from what I understand, but that's the way the law was signed into law itself. Eligible employees are those defined by the FLSA who have been on the payroll for only 30 days. They don't have to work for the employer 12 months. They don't have to work for the employer 1,250 hours in the last 12 months as under the traditional FMLA. Any employer that has worked for the employer in at least 30 calendar days prior to the leave would be an eligible employee for the eFMLA. The eFMLA provides up to 12 weeks of protected leave, absence from work, immediately with no waiting period. There is no 30-day waiting period. The leave is immediate for a qualifying need related to a public health emergency. Next slide. So private employers with less than 500 employees and public agency employers have to provide this job protected leave for absences due to the following 6 conditions. And these numbers are important. These are right in the act, and they will be referred to. Now, we're going to have a regulation. I'm going to talk about the regulation here in a minute, how the regulation is going to be written. And these numbered items here also determine the payroll tax credit that the employer is going to get to take. So, number 1, due to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order for the employee, or self-quarantine. Number 2, self-quarantine at the request of their healthcare provider. And in reality here is that we're not going to have written documentation a lot of times, because they're telling us don't go to our healthcare provider. A lot of this is going to be done by telephone, by hearsay, I guess, by trusting the employee to tell us what this information is and what they've been told to do. Someone that is experiencing symptoms of the virus and seeking medical diagnosis. Again, how is the employer going to know this? We're going to have to take our employees' words for it. Caring for a person who is advised to quarantine or self-isolate. We could have employees that must stay home to care for a family member, and the definition of family member is going to be very broad here from what I'm reading in the text of the law and the information that's come from Congress on this. It's probably going to include children, children both in a family that where the children of domestic partners, etc. So we're going to have a broad definition of family member in here. Caring for their son or daughter. We're going to see a broader definition here when the regulations come out. Whose school or place of care. School is, that's easy to define and know. Place of care is going to be something that regulations are going to have to give us some information on. Where place of care is closed, or, interesting yet, their child care provider is not available. So a family could be relying on someone that's a child care provider. It could be a grandparent. And now, because of this social distancing, we're being told to stay away from our grandparents. So we've got that one there is going to be particularly interesting here, where a child care provider is not available and the employee has to stay home. That would trigger number 5. Or the employee there has a substantially similar conditions. And what that is Congress obviously threw that in so that employers, so that we couldn't nitpick the first 5. So if an employee is experiencing something similar here that's causing their absence, then we're going to have this requirement here to provide this EFMLA leave. So next slide. Let's move on here. First 10 days on this EFMLA leave, and there's a lot of misinformation coming on the media and on TV now about what the paid leave is going to be. The first 10 days is actually unpaid leave. However, the law says that the employee, solely at their option, not at the employer's option, the employee at their option, regardless of the employer's policies, can elect to use any earned vacation, personal, medical, or sick leave that their employer's benefit plan provides for. I want you to be sure you heard me correctly on that. The employer cannot mandate or restrict the use of any earned vacation, personal, medical, or sick leave if one of those 6 conditions are met for the employee. So the employee at their option, and they may say, no, I don't want to use the paid benefit, I want to save it, that's fine. They get the unpaid first 10 days, first 2 weeks, in other words, would be unpaid, or they can elect to use whatever benefit that they have earned through their employer's policies. Now, after the first 2 weeks, after first 10 days, then the employer is required to pay 2/3 of the employee's regular rate as defined by the FLA Section 7E. And that's generally the regular rate in which overtime would be calculated upon. It may be more than the hourly rate that an employee is paid, but that will be defined further in the regulations. For example, an employee may be on in a furniture retail store or that type of retail store where they're paid an hourly rate plus a commission. That extra bonus pay in there, that extra incentive, could increase that regular rate there that the employee would be due. We'll learn more when these regulations come out there, but the Act itself relies on the FLSA for these definitions of employee, employer, and regular rate. Now, for conditions 1, 2, and 3 on the previous slide, the $511 per day and $5,110 is a minimum maximum. The employer can pay more than that if they want to, but that is the minimum that would occur, that would be required. Now that relates to the tax credit it's going to be, so you'll see how this works here in a minute. And then for conditions 4, 5, and 6, the maximum is $200 per pay. Now remember, it's 2/3 of their regular rate, so that would be the minimum, 2/3 of their regular rate, up to that amount there. So you'd have those two different rates in there, depending. So it's going to be very important, record-wise, for employers to record precisely what event, which one of these events is resulting in the absence by the employee. Now, all of this EFMLA leave ceases when the employee returns from work after the leave, and the leave is not banked or carried forward. Okay, Nathan, next slide. Okay, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, the FFCRA, allows for some exemptions as determined by the Secretary of Labor for employers with less than 50 and less than 25 employees. And this is going to be spelled out in the forthcoming regulations. Congress left this open and is giving the Solicitor of Labor, Secretary of Labor, very much latitude here and discretion in determining how this special exemption is going to work. And it's based on what burden is going to be placed on employers, very small employers. Employer with fewer than 25 are going to be shielded from liability for job protection. That's one of the things they wanted in there, which I thought was very interesting here for Congress to put a shield from liability from private lawsuits. But we will see. Pardon me, folks. So healthcare providers and emergency responder employers can exclude these employees from the EFMLA provisions, and that's another interesting provision, but an obvious one because those employees are needed. So we're going to see more in the regulations as they come out by what the Secretary of Labor intends there. Now, the payroll tax credit is the amount paid not to exceed the maximum and the previous slide, plus the cost of employer provided health insurance. And again, the regulation is going to define how that health insurance, that employer provided health insurance cost is going to be added to that payroll tax credit that employers will be able to take to help shoulder the cost of this EFMLA paid sick leave. Okay, next slide. So how is this going to work with unemployment insurance? There were several questions in the about unemployment insurance, but let me first, since I've talked about the regulations, here's what's going to happen, and typically with regulations. Normally it takes 1 year to 2 years for the federal agencies to write a regulation. This one's going to be done in 2 weeks. The way they will do it, normally there is what's called a notice of an NPRM, which is actually a draft of the regulation, which goes out to the public for public comment, then finalization, and then a final rule is published. They're going to issue both at the same time. The draft and the final rule will be issued simultaneously. They will be identical. the regulation will go into effect immediately. Then they will be accepting comments as they go, and this will have the opportunity allow them the opportunity to correct, make any changes, make any amendments to the regulation. But you can be assured the writers up there in Washington, the Department of Labor, are at it now, trying to get this regulation written, get it done, and get it published within 2 weeks. So what we'll do, and what everybody's going to have to do, is stay tuned, be careful with news media accounts and interpretations of these regulations. Stick with known sources who follow the laws, read the laws, and know how to interpret them. And we will be keeping our clients informed about what the regulation says, and we'll be doing additional things with that to make sure that everybody understands what the details are, because the details are the devil is in the details, as they say, with these regulations. Unemployment insurance, you probably have already heard, but just quickly, all the states, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, everywhere I've checked, they're waiving the first week waiting period. They're waiving personal interviews. They're actually they don't want the interviews. They're now saying it has to be filing online. All the states are incurring, the websites are breaking down. Georgia's collapsed. They had 5 times the normal number of applications. I think I heard where North Carolina was set up to only take like 3,000 applications a week. They took, I think it was 15,000 in the first 3 or 4 days of this. I may have those numbers a little off there, but it's just to give you an example of how many are applying. So there's a special COVID-19 reason is being established and not questioned. The employer's form will have the same thing. If they check that off, the quicker the employer gets that form filled out and back to the state, then the quicker the employee can get their unemployment check. Other than that, the governor has said that all the governors are saying that there's many other provisions and waivers that are on the table with regard to unemployment insurance waivers and those kinds of things out there. So next slide. Now, one thing everybody needs to remember here, it's not a disability under the ADA. The infection is considered a direct threat to the health and safety of others. So that waives a lot of the Americans with Disabilities Act protection there. That does allow employers to restrict those coming to work. You can prohibit those with fevers from coming to work, or you can prohibit those with symptoms coming to work. You can take their temperature before they come to work. I recommend that you do it before they clock in, but you can do that. You can prohibit and screen those that are quarantined to care for members in their families. But I would recommend that you immediately establish your policy, set it, post it clearly, make sure everybody understands. You can send employees home who have symptoms, but you must remember to protect the health information from disclosure. And that's running head on into reality here. Keep related documents in a separate health file. Like I said earlier, when I started, our employees are our families, but one thing you want to try to avoid doing, you don't want to go running around saying Nathan's got it, Lindsay's got it. You want to try to avoid that as much as possible, because you would be sharing personal health information in violations of the privacy laws. Next slide. So don't broadcast or disclose the employee's name. Be aware that when you start talking about what employees, let's say they're caring for a family member, sharing that information could be a violation of the GINA, the Genetic Information and Non-Disclosure Act. So just, I know it's going to be difficult, it's obvious, but just keep that in mind here, that this is health information of each of our employees, and we've got to make every effort to keep it as protected as possible. There have been some waivers for the medical providers with regard to health information. Department of Health and Human Services is providing some waivers there. You can go on their website to check on those. There's the EEOC landing page that does talk about some of these things and provide some guidance. Next slide. There's those links again, if you want to go to those sites. And let's see, I think that's the last slide. That's it for my part here. I went over my time a little bit. I apologize for that. So I'm going to stop here and Nathan, turn it over to you or Lindsay.
All right. Thank you, Mark. That was great. I mean, I think we're getting a lot of questions because this is a very important issue and a lot of just unknowns, moving parts. Just wanted to tick through a couple of these that were coming in and just get your immediate thoughts. I had a question related to business expenses. You kind of referenced internet usage. What about utility bills? Would that, say a power bill goes up because someone's at home, is that considered a business expense?
It could, but again, almost all of these are going to be paid well above the minimum wage, and whether that would take the employee below the minimum wage, that cost would take the employee below the minimum wage in that week, probably wouldn't happen. But yes, it could if they could show a significant increase.
Okay, I've got a question here. Is 2/3 of the regular pay required for hourly workers?
Yes, for all the workers, salaried or hourly.
Got a kind of industry specific question. Are physical therapy, occupational speech therapy, are they exempt as healthcare workers?
They would be in that group from what I understand.
You're good at answering these quickly. I like this. Does unemployment insurance only apply to permanent layoffs, or does it also apply to temporary layoffs?
Unemployment applies, they've waived the first week. A temporary layoff would be covered from what I understand.
After the first 10 days, can employers require that their employees use paid time off for the remaining 1/3 of pay while they are on qualifying EFMLA leave? And that's in the chat box if you need to see it.
I can't see the chat box. So
okay, I'll say it again. It said after the first 10 days, can employees require that the employees use paid time off for the remaining 1/3 of pay while they are on qualifying EFMLA leave?
I don't know the answer to that one.
Okay. Well,
Mark, we'll just we'll note that question and we'll see if we can get an answer to whomever asked the question.
I don't think we're going to know the answer until we can see the regulations.
I think this was one question on a lot of people's minds. Where does the money come from to pay these employees if there's no money coming in, related to paying and then receiving a tax credit later on? Do you have a great answer for that one, or next topic?
I don't know the answer to that one either.
That may be Ron. That may be coming for the next topic, because Ron just chimed in my ear.
Yeah.
How will tax credits work for nonprofits?
I'm not a tax expert. There was, they did this before. There is, nonprofits do get tax credits, and they should go to their accountant, because this has been done in the past, I believe back in 2008 or 2009, but there is a way.
What is the difference between 80 hours of sick leave to care for a child and the leave with the first 10 days unpaid? So what is the difference between 80 hours of sick leave to care for a child versus leave with the first 10 days unpaid?
I don't quite understand the question there. There's no difference there. It's just that the first 2 weeks, the first 10 days are unpaid leave. It could still be 1, 2, or 3, or 4, 5, and 6. The leave could be 1, 2, and 3, or 4, 5, and 6. But the tax credit doesn't kick in until the employer starts paying the 2/3 of the regular rate.
Question would be, so if we furlough now, but they're still furloughed after April 2nd, will we then have to start paying them?
That we will not know until the regulations are issued. The act says it takes place 15 days after the president signed it, which will be 15 days from the 18th. We don't know whether these regulations are going to credit or allow the employer to credit anything they've done prior to the effective date. We'll have to wait and see.
Is emergency paid sick leave separate from EFMLA?
Emergency paid sick leave. I don't quite understand the question. EFMLA leave is the emergency sick leave that we're talking about.
Okay. Can employees receive FMLA benefits more than once during the calendar year? An example would be if they have different qualifying events at different times.
The way the statute reads, the way the act reads, is that once the employee returns to work, the emergency leave, it's the EFMLA ends right there. That's not carried forward or banked.
If an employee has up to 1 year of sick leave, why can't they use all their sick time if they need to be off for, say, 12 weeks?
It sounds good to me. I don't see a problem with it. We'll have to see what the regulation says. I would think that they're going to allow employees to use their accumulated paid leave, even if it runs past the runs into the what would be EFMLA. So let's just think optimistically about that.
I think that concludes our questions. Mark, thank you very much for the information. I know you'll plan to stay on to the end of the call, so if anyone has any additional questions for Mark, just enter those in the chat box, but we're going to proceed to Ron Elmore. So Ron Elmore is the Regional Director of the SBTDC, Small Business Technology Development Center. He has over 30 years of experience servicing business owners and creating wealth growth plans. Ron has established a remarkable track record as an executive in sales and private equity. He is now an expert in digital marketing, developing strong sales teams, creating tools such as sales playbooks, as well as privately held companies, helping them raise capital and create wealth for business owners. So I'm going to now hand it over to Ron, who's going to talk about SBA assistance, as well as the services, one-on-one counseling services for the SBTDC in our community. So thank you, Ron, for being here.
My pleasure, and good morning. Yesterday, we as a team in North Carolina with the Small Business Technology Development Centers had a 2-hour webinar with the Small Business Administration in Washington, D.C. So the intent of this morning is to lay out what is available to small businesses effective immediately, the parameters of that, how much, how, and the help that you have available to get it right the first time. If you're taking any notes, that would be a phrase that I would want you to remember. Let's get it right the first time. And we're talking about the application for funding. Again, the Small Business Technology Development Center, I've got the address, here in Hickory, a phone number. This is your lifeline to help, for help in applying accurately and correctly to the SBA online system. We've been trained in it, though we've been trained like 12 hours ago. But the point being, and as Mark was saying, certain things are evolving. But the point is, there is a system. The enthusiasm of the SBA, you would appreciate it as a tax holder, a taxpayer. They're very enthused. Their quote was, "Keep the businesses in business." Let's give them enough funds to keep the businesses in business. So we're here as the SBTDC of North Carolina to help you do that. We have 65 consultants here in North Carolina. Our fees are already paid for you. All the work we do is confidential. So here in Hickory, we have, there's 4 of us. So leave voice messages there. Go to our website, which I didn't put on this slide, but is sbtdc.org, and find out other help if you're outside of this geographic area. Go to the next. The reason that this can be important is that you look at your business holistically. Is the way that these applications are going to. I highly encourage you to step back when we talk about the impact of this virus on your business, is to look at your business holistically. We'll go into that in some more detail, but never before, and this is key, never before ever have there been loans for a pandemic nationally. This is called the all full of acronyms, Economic Injury Disaster Loans, EIDL, right? They've been by county in the past, hurricanes, tornadoes, etc. But never in our history has the SBA dealt with it across states, across counties, and all the states now are beginning to declare disaster. North Carolina, has done that. So starting at the first, this is assessing the financial impact on your business. We highly encourage you, and we're here to help you, SBTDC is, to develop the strategies for your business continuity and recovery. Analyze your cash flow, both during this down period and also the ramp up when things come back to normal. What will that look like, and how fast can your particular company come back to normal? What are the expenses of doing that? You'll be asked, and as we'll discuss later, where are your current creditors in this, and to analyze how that should be communicated. It'll be part of the message in your application. To have a debt schedule, we'll get to that as well. And in preparing that SBA economic injury loan application, which is online now, is let's get it right first. That's the other thing that I would highly recommend. Get it right first. This is all going to a central location electronically. In Fort Worth, Texas, you can imagine the queues. If it comes in correct, it's going to go smoothly, and you'll get your money in a timely manner. If there are errors or it's not clear and there's information that's not complete, it will go into a reject queue or another queue for reexamination. You'll be communicated with by the loan officers electronically, and even, heaven forbid, through the mail. So as a result, you can see just from that the importance of getting it right the first time. And we're here to help you do that. It's not rocket science, but at the same token, the condition of your current financial records will be a critical success factor. And if we can help you examine that first, we'd be happy to do that. The next. Common issues that we can help you with is listed there. Right down to marketing. You may say, well, marketing in this. Well, maybe there's other markets that your particular service or your company could now change its angle that could very well be beneficial to you. So again, we're very good at helping digital marketing and things of that nature. Your inventory and supply chain, how is that being affected? And the SBA was very sympathetic to that, and very much wants you to examine the condition of your supply chain. If your supply chain is negatively impacting your ability to deliver, then that's clearly has to be reflected in your projections going forward. Are there any facility or cleanup costs, as part of this that you would not normally have as expense that needs to be in the projections, as an expense or as a loss? And check your, maintenance contracts and things of that nature. Insurance coverage. Do you have, business interruption insurance? You might check with your insurance agency if you haven't done that, already. And again, we're here to talk about access to capital, and that's the topic of the remaining part of the afternoon. The next is just, again, the spirit of this. You would, again, been impressed with the Washington, D.C. team that was on the webinar training yesterday. We are in love with, small businesses, as defined as, 500 or less employees. The issues have been proclaimed, meaning a disaster area for the state, of North Carolina, and the systems are in place, the people are in place to begin accepting, applications. So let's move on to the basics of the disaster loans. First, what businesses are eligible to apply? Let's be clear, first of all, that this is a working capital loan, right? Working capital loan are available to small businesses, agriculture cooperatives, you see there, aquaculture businesses, most private nonprofit organizations. And again, the SBA defines small businesses, on their website by industry segments. So a small business for a software company, could be a very few employees, and it could be measured by revenue. A small business for a manufacturing facility is only measured by employees, not by revenue. So there is a table on the SBA website if you have any questions about sizes of companies called small by the Small Business Administration. It goes by your NICS code, your industry code that's on your tax return. That 6-digit code puts you in a category, and then if you're in a certain revenue or employee size range, then in fact that's the definition. Nonprofits in this category do not have a size. There's no size comment about the size of a not-for-profit. So, what does this include? The key word for your projections is how are you directly affected by this disaster, and financially in your financial performance. The businesses that offer services directly to the business. So if a business has been affected and you're providing services to them and they no longer want orders, then suddenly, obviously, that's impacting you. Other businesses indirectly related that are likely to be harmed by the losses of their community. An example there is, a manufacturer of widgets may be eligible as well as the wholesaler in their distribution chain, the retailer that's taking those products, and even members of that supply chain. So again, I hope you're appreciating that the SBA really understands, the nature of your business and is there to help address all of those issues, and we're here to help you address or get this in a format that explains the problem and the request for capital from the SBA and your application. Going on, the basics of the disaster loan, what's the criteria? Primarily 3 major things. And all of this is evolving, a little bit like Mark said, on almost a daily basis. Let's start with credit history. This target is currently moving, but again, this is your personal, as a privately held business owner, your personal credit history has a bearing to this. Though this target is moving, and the exact words they used yesterday is don't get hung up on this. Let's just say it is what it is and move on. The other is, this is a loan, right? So this is not a grant or something that does not have to be paid back. So again, the SBA will determine that the applicant business has the ability to repay. Therefore, they're looking at cash flow, right, as a key, as part of your key, part of your application. SBA is a cash flow lender, right? So you have to have, 3 or 4 months. We say, well, how long is this going to last? How long am I going to be impacted? Well, certainly I'm sure you as business owners are not sitting back doing nothing. You're probably trying to retool or rethink of how I still can get orders, or we've got restaurants that are setting up tents and parking lots and doing drive-by creative things to try to keep the revenue flowing. Certainly you're thinking of that as a business owner, but the point is, this is all about what do you think the next 3 or 4 months will look like if you projected forward, and this will come to the question then of how much money do you need, right? And we can help you with that, but if you're not familiar with doing projections, but this will be a key document, is to project your revenues going forward with the impacts, increased expense, decreased revenue, whatever that might be. Third is eligibility. Applicants must be physically located in the county and the state. That means there's no post office boxes. When it's asked for your address on the application, no post office box. There's a physical address in the state, suffering losses due to the disaster. You may have other losses. That last sentence, you may have other losses. Things may not have even been going well prior to this. This is not to refinance your company. This is not to fix things from the past, right? It is to take projections going forward and asking for capital to get us a bridge, to the other side, so to speak, as to how much do we need to do this, knowing that we probably are cutting expenses in some companies, in others, different situations. I've already talked to yesterday at 14 conversations with 14 different businesses, all of which were so different. Each of you have your own situations that need to be written out and explained as part of the application process. And again, we're here to help you through that process. Going on. So, how much can I borrow? Eligible entities, again, eligible entities, that's back to the earlier slide, right, can qualify for loans up to $2 million. The interest rates for this disaster as set by Congress. So, we don't yell at anybody about this. Congress did this, so call your congressman or whatever. It is a fine rate, but, some could say, why isn't it lower? It is what it is. It's 3.75% for businesses, 2.75% for not-for-profit. But here's the kicker. Here's the great news, I think, is the terms of these loans can be long. So again, will what your cash flow can determine on the debt as to your payment, what you can tolerate. But we can also help you, or you can apply and ask for longer terms. This is very rare. I hardly ever see anybody offering terms on a loan for 30 years. So again, the empathy, of the government to small business, I thought was evident, in the way they're rolling this out. Eligibility for these working capital loans are based on the size. Must be a small business, again, matching that table of the definition of small businesses by NEX code, and the type of business that it is. That's how they size that. So how can you use the funds? Well, it's a good list there, right? Working capital we use to pay, fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, other bills that could have been paid had the disaster not occurred, right? So again, it's projecting forward. Here's my expenses, from last year and on a monthly basis, and then suddenly here came the virus. Whoops. Lower orders, lower revenue, higher expense. They'll look at that historic bills to be paid, expenses to be paid, and your application, can ask for the gap between that and what it was in the past. Going next. Okay, this is important. If you've ever gotten a loan, this is a loan is not coming from a bank. This is coming directly from the Treasury Department. So again, you cannot go to your bank and ask, I want to be part of EISL and I want to apply. They don't have access to this. This is directly to the business owner, to the U.S. Treasury, through the SBA. So without any collateral showing that you have had damage, no collateral, you're not pledging any asset to this, is $25,000. If you want $25,000 or $1, up to $2 million, then the SBA needs hard asset collateral. They put the word real estate in here because that's what they like the best. And again, it's important to note that even if you should be creating an asset listing, machinery, anything else that's in your company besides the building. If you don't own the building and you rent, list the machinery, hard assets. You'll also be asked to fill out a personal financial statement, which will include your personal assets, a home, cars, et cetera. What you're doing is the SBA wants to use this as collateral, but you may say, well, I already have a lender that has first position on all these assets. No problem. That's the message. They'll take a second, third, fourth, or fifth position on that, but they want to know if you want more than you want 25,001, then you'll be asked to list assets and estimated value, of those assets. And if you have debt, then you'll be asked for a debt schedule, current debt. It might be on a house, building, machinery. Could be all of that. But again, collateral is going to be part of this. But notice the next bullet. They will not decline the loan for lack of, right? That's the key, right? Meaning, if there's not much collateral, we're still open to help, but it requires the borrowers to pledge what is available. That's the key, right? So this is a key slide if you need more than $25,000. And again, if you've done bank loans before in your career, you know that this is normal, frankly. Even though we are dealing with the Treasury and they're relaxing so much of the normal, such as the terms and the fact that they'll take second, third, and fourth position on current debt. Okay. What kind of businesses can apply? This is really I'd say every business would be really the word. They just kind of randomly pick some of these. If you have any questions about that, then certainly type them in. But the things that aren't involved will be the ones that are not cannot apply are on the next slide. But the key must be a physical presence in the declared disaster area. Right. So again, no post office boxes, things of that nature. Applicant's economic presence is declared in the area. It does not meet this requirement. The physical presence must be tangible and significant. That's why they showed you the pictures. A post office box would not qualify for physical presence. Okay, moving on. This is a working capital loan, right? And it's called, the EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, comes directly from the U.S. Treasury. Not a bank loan, not available through a bank. So there's only one way to get it, and it's at that website that's listed there on the slide deck that you'll get a copy of this, or you can take a picture of it now. But there is no cost to apply. There is no obligation to take the loan if offered. Part of the exercise, I was talking to a lady yesterday, and she was saying, well, I really only need, this, and I may need more later. Well, the coaching we got yesterday was, it's going to be more complicated to get more later, right? So again, doesn't mean you can't get more later. It's just those processes haven't quite been defined. So again, yes, you do not have to take the $25,000, for example. You take less, but again, we can help you as SBTDC look at those projections and see how much the entity needs, to bridge this gap. If for county, this may not be applicable in our part of the state, but the last bullet is especially applicable to the folks on the east that already have, bless their hearts, have loans from hurricane damage that they're paying back now, and they've had, say, second hurricane, and now they have this. And the point this one is making is that there is not the ability to consolidate EIDL loans. They'll stay separate. This is not a refinancing of existing loans. This is yet another loan that on different terms, different amortization dates, et cetera. They can't be consolidated into one debt schedule. Okay. A couple major important things has already caused some confusion in some of the people that have applied. Form 5 versus Form 5C. When we go online and begin this, first of all, let me stop. These forms, we highly recommend that you print out these forms and fill them out before you go online. Because as you're online and you don't have certain information, or you need, if there is a save button though, there's a save button and you're setting up your own password, and it does save your information. But thinking ahead, like I talked to again a lady yesterday in her company, and I told her you're probably going to need 2019, 2018 month by month P&L would be very helpful to show the impact of the virus. And then she went on to tell me 10 reasons why her accountant hasn't got her tax returns for 2018 and 19, or 2018, 2017, et cetera. Well, in reality, under that scenario, she's not ready to apply because it will go in as an incomplete application. So again, sometimes printing this out and seeing what all is required, understanding the condition of your financials, or what we or others could be able, your accountant or you would be able to help you get prepared so that when you are uploading and downloading documents, on this site, and you finally hit done and it gives you the smiley face and it's off and running, that will go to adjudicator that is complete. They will, your personal phone, phone contacts, email contacts will be there. They will communicate with you with questions. We have a lot of those questions that we can help you with up front by looking at your current stuff, but we're only 4 of us, so I don't want to oversell this. But again, things to take note on there are they're going to go look at your tax returns. You're going to give them authorization to look at your company and personal, company and principal, and all. If you have a company that has more than one owner, then they will need personal financial statements for anyone that owns 20% or more of your company. So again, if Uncle Joe owned 20% and you haven't talked to him in a long time, we're going to need, his personal financial statement. And they need to be within 90 days. So again, if you've got a personal financial statement from 3 years ago, you're still going to need to update that, get the right data, current appraisal of your house, not appraisal, but balance on your home, mortgage balance, those kinds of things need to be current, because they'll just go to a computer system and verify that what you put in is accurate. And then if not, it's going to come back and they'll have some discussion, about you. Schedule of liabilities, that's a debt schedule, right? Again, the forms are out there on the website. We have forms that we could help you with. And then the personal financial statement, as I mentioned, is for the business owners, and then anyone with 20% or more equity in the business, your partner, partners, et cetera. So paper applications are acceptable, but electronically is faster. What I'd like you to just write down is, let's get it right now, right? If we get it right now, then it'll be expedited. You'll get right through quickly. If there's questions, it will just slow it down. Okay, the next. Other information that may be requested, you can see it there. I talked about the partners, managing members, affiliates. If you're a related entity, you have your tax return says Ron Elmore LLC, yet you're running a restaurant. They'll want to know any related entity to the restaurant. So Ron Elmore LLC, when you produce its tax returns, as well as the restaurant, so that they can see, the related, entities. But if the most recent tax returns haven't been filed, a year-end profit and loss statement for the tax year. So there's a forgiveness factor right there for some of us. Current year-to-date profits and loss statements. Again, we should have that, but we'll help you with it. And then additional filing requirements, monthly sales figures. This will be critical. So if I would suggest that everybody go back in their 2019 P&L and print it out monthly now. Print it out monthly so we can see the sales month to month, because here we are in March, I'm guessing sales have been impacted. So it would be easy to track going across that our sales have been impacted and they're being projected forward in 2020. This is the impact on my virus. It's very clear. My expenses went up as well. You get the picture. So the month to month could be a great way of presenting, your case in your 2019 P&L. Ineligible entities, if you're running a casino or a racetrack, you're not, as well as religious organizations, charitable organizations, and agriculture. Again, agriculture, farmers and cattlemen, et cetera. Again, this is not unnormal coming from private equity. There are only a handful of banks that would even loan money to agriculture. So it is what it is, but that's what that is. Going on. So again, how to apply. The unique thing of this particular disaster is that the SBA is not putting people in the field. If you were ever impacted by a tornado or a hurricane, there would be people actually deported to that area, to that county. They set up tables. They interview business owners as they come in. They work with SBTDC counselors who are standing next to the SBA counselor. Not here. They're not deploying anyone into the field because it's the United States of America. So impossible, right? So the online system and using SBTDC, a SCORE chapter, any folks like that were funded by the SBA. Yours truly and our staff are funded 50% by the SBA and 50% by North Carolina. So we're kind of the U.S. Army, Marine Corps, Frontline, National Guard, whatever you want to call it, to help you with these applications, get your financials together, but we're limited as well, so do your best online, but we're here to help you. Paper applications can be downloaded. You see that. You see that it's all going to Fort Worth, Texas, and you'll have help desks. You've got our phone number. There will be help desks and the other information there at the bottom of that slide. And again, the assistance from the SBA in this particular situation is relying on its partners rather than its staff to come into the field. And those are the Small Business Development Center, SCORE, the Women's Business Centers, Veterans Business Outreach. And I'll also say for the Small Business Centers, which is unique in North Carolina, out of the community colleges, may be able to be of help here. We'll get some of them, we'll get them this information, but they haven't gone through, yet the training that we've gone through, but that's okay. They can still be of help. They know what a good getting financial packages together for banks, can be with that. So again, in closing, as soon as possible, but quick and inaccurate won't work, right? So rushing and not having it accurate or having it complete, it'll get rejected and actually slow it down. So again, quality is, as you can see, bullet number 2 there, the biggest delay is missing information. So again, missing and I'll say both missing and can't understand the information. It may not flow well or make sense. All they'll do is come back and ask you, try and reach you. You're leaving your cell phone numbers, and they're giving you online messaging on your forms to come back and help you. If the loan's denied, there is a 6-month window to give you a chance to reply and come back for a re-application, all of which will be done in writing. So again, back to the let's get it right. The first time would be the coaching. So with that, I'll stop, and we're here to help. I think this is something that I know everyone's very, very interested in, and so we look forward to helping you in any way we can.
Got a couple of questions, Ron,
Sure.
that were coming in. This kind of got a couple of questions that were phrased this way, but I'll just use this one kind of covered those folks. I think a lot of people look at this as it's a great program, but maybe my business is shut down. I'm a restaurant, for instance. Effectively, I'm reduced greatly. Are there anything that exists or is being potentially talked about at this point that is not a loan? I guess people look at this as I've got no money coming in. I'm going to take either a personal guarantee or collateral against personal assets or even business assets, and I have no money coming in and I don't know when that money may come in. Why should I potentially take out? Is this an effective loan program, or are there other grant programs potentially that are not tied to a repayment?
Great question. So far, and there's no indication of anything. The answer is no. But I'll say the but. The key is, I think everybody on the line knows, is about cash flow, right? And what the balance of what I think what they're doing, Nathan, is if I could extend this out to 20, 30-year payments, it's a low payment. And if my business was viable before the virus, then let's see how much I lost by shutting it, no revenue, et cetera. Let's ask for the money that gets the bridge. And then ideally, when it comes back, I've gotten it because I've gotten good terms, I can make the cash flow payment. But that's part of the help we can give, or that has to be looked at.
Good answer. One question that really good question was, what about someone in a startup situation, a pre-revenue startup situation, someone that's getting this business going, and this has unfortunately happened at the wrong time. They don't potentially have some of those, balance sheets and other things and dollars coming in. Is this something applicable to them?
If they have a federal tax ID and register the Secretary of State's office as a business, and they have expense, and they were anticipating revenue. If they were anticipating, this is my answer, so I'm not sure. If they were anticipating revenue, and if they did 2020 projections and said we were projecting to make Y, and because of this, I'm not making anything, to me, there's a story there worth an application.
What are you kind of hearing? I think an important part is, you think of any federal government program as bureaucratic in nature, and how quickly can those dollars turn, really, especially right now when people are really being impacted. Are you getting any indication from the SBA federal level potential turnaround times? If someone, I know it's going to be a mass of people doing all this across the country into one funnel, but are they saying it may be a 2-week turnaround, or is this like a 2-month kind of processing turnaround, or is it as you come in the door and we'll do it as fast as we can?
The spirit, I can only go by the spirit of the 2-hour meeting yesterday. As a taxpayer, I was highly encouraged that they care so much for this market segment. They understand the problems. They know it has to be fast turnaround, and that's why the emphasis is on electronic filing and getting it accurate. And the intent is to get it back as fast as possible. Even that $25,000, this was unsecured. I mean, give me a story of why I need $25,000. I mean, so there was that spirit of turning it fast. So that's all I can really say.
I think this was probably addressed, but I just want to let you hit a softball again. This sounds potentially like I'm going to need it for my business. I know you said some of the initial things, asset listing and things that they should immediately do, but is it calling your office? Is it, calling one of the folks there that's got this experience and knows how to walk? What's the best first step for someone to take if they think this is going to need to come into play for them?
One, if under the theme of, can I do this myself? Yes or no, right? If out of that, the answer is, I think I need help, they should call our office, go to sbtdc.org and click on the Boone Hickory Center. We'll get a message from them. They can also email me at relmore@sbtdc.org. And I've talked to 16 clients yesterday. We talked about things they better kind of get together. Some didn't need help, some did need help. So again, we would be the first line. If they have a SCORE mentor or folks of that nature, again, funded by the SBA, they I think went through the same training we did yesterday. Also, the SBC here locally at CBCC, Jeff Newell and his team probably could be of good help, because we all know how to help folks prepare for either meeting with a banker or et cetera. This is very similar to that, in putting that kind of information together. So,
with that, it's getting a little bit later.
Yep.
Ron, great. Thank you very much for covering that.
You're
I know
welcome.
it's a lot of moving parts right now, and as he said, he was basically getting the latest and greatest as of yesterday on this. So we're all flying as 35,000 feet in the air and really building it as we go. All slides, presentations, this has been recorded. Those will be emailed out to everyone later today. We're also going to have those posted in numerous places. I know the Chamber's website, their COVID-19 page, will have it on there later today. I'll also make available the slides and recordings from yesterday in case you wanted to hear that. That was more health related and business continuity planning. Some very good information in there and worth your while to go through and at least have it in the background as you're doing some work or go through the slide deck. You've got a lot of partners in this right now, and our means is to be that listening ear for you or that person you need to email with questions. This is what we're geared up for. This is why we're trying to do our best possible job, because we know so much of this community is built upon your companies and your employees, and just it doesn't churn without you all here. So this is our objective right now is to really help you as much as possible. With that, I think we've got a little bit of time. I'm going to turn this back over real quick to Lindsay just for some final comments.
Thank you again, everybody, and thank you, Nathan, also Ron, and also Mark. I appreciate all of our partners in this series. Just one more thing. If you have additional ideas for topics for future webinars on how we can continue to assist in navigating you and bringing you the latest and most relevant information, please send those to us via email or throw them in the chat box. We're definitely all ears to serve you in this time. So without anything else, we stand adjourned today. Thanks for calling in.